Hello, I'm Jonathan Bowman-Perks, and welcome back to my favourite time of the week. And as part of the Inspiring Leadership series, I'm with Roger Steare, who I've known for about 15 years and have a huge respect for him as the corporate philosopher, particularly at Cass Business School, where he's the corporate philosopher in residence. Roger has touched and moved a number of clients that I know by his first book here, which was called Ethicability. And then more recently, he's been quite innovative in the way he's created this, the latest book, Thinking Outside the Inbox, which I find very interesting and very challenging, which is why I want Roger on this series. Roger, welcome.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's lovely to be here.
Lovely having you here. The first thing I'm really interested in is you've done a range of different things. Do you want to just in a nutshell, give us a little bit about your life?
Yeah, I'm not a typical CV, so I really am the son of a preacher man. I then read history of Western philosophy at university with Conrad Russell, the son of Bertrand Russell. Not that old, it was Bertrand. Yeah. I then played safe and got a job in banking, which I found really boring, and apologies to all the bankers out there. It was retail banking, no derivative trading. And then I dropped out and became a residential social worker with teenagers in care and got my MBA in life. I then put my knowledge of banking and delinquency together and became a headhunter in the city, which many people find. Ended up running a subsidiary of Adecco, which is the world's largest employment agency. So I've done my corporate CEO role. And then I had a disagreement with the group CEO. I left, he didn't. And I started doing this work, which is around helping leaders at work think about their purpose, their values, their decision making and their behaviours as a moral philosopher almost 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I know a number of the organisations that you are doing some great both speaking, facilitation, going in and challenging them around the whole area of ethics, moral integrity, but also leadership. And in your experience, you've seen good and bad, you've seen healthy leadership, you've seen toxic. You know, what has inspired you? What skills of leadership has inspired you, or who has inspired you?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. It's probably the most important question. And sadly, as I know you know, Jonathan, 80% of my work has come from organisations who've been in a bad place. So oil and gas companies who've had an incident, major incident. Almost all of the UK banking organisations, a couple of international banks who've all found themselves in a bad place. So I've actually been called in to help understand where misleadership has got them into the wrong place. And I would say that it's not because the people are bad as such. I mean, clearly there are people who display, what psychologists call the dark triad behaviours of narcissism, Machiavellianism and psychopathy. But because the system is rigged against humanity, where people are not paid to care for other human beings, they're paid to focus on the short-term bottom line. And it's not only destroying lives and businesses, it's also, in my view, destroying our ecosystem.
All right. And that is a major issue that's going on right now, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Which we'll talk about in the second half in the Inspiring Leadership Extra. So anybody in particular that you'd say, or a particular trait, skills that you see as good leadership?
So I always hesitate about saying that an individual is a great leader, because I think you're a hostage to fortune then. And part of that is because I don't really see leadership as a positional or status attribute. Leadership for me is a skill.
Yeah.
And if you take a large bank, for example, who leads the bank when it comes to someone in a branch or in a contact center talking to a customer? And the reality is, it's that person, that teller or the contact center colleague who leads the bank in that conversation.
Yeah.
And I would say that one of the things I've learned over the last 20 years is that hierarchical management, and I use that word deliberately, tends to get organizations into a bad place. The solution for that is to give people the chance to lead in those organisations. And my experience is, and I'm sure everybody that you work with and people listen to this will know, that most human beings can do the most amazing things, and in particular under real pressure. So I characterise it by ordinary people doing extraordinary jobs, not at work, but actually as a son and a daughter, a parent, a friend, when loved ones are, being diagnosed with cancer, or a teenager's, on drugs. That's where leadership is displayed. And we have this weird ability to sort of dumb down that trait that almost all of us have, to display those inspiring leadership skills.
Yeah, and I want to go into that in more detail in the second part. And now you as a person, you've been a leader in different places. Interesting enough, a decade I brought my old firm Penna, where I used to be, but long after I'd left.
Yeah.
And as a leader in those early days, when you look back, do you ever go, oh no, really, what did I do? I mean, what was the sort of biggest mistake as you look back in your style of leadership? And what did you learn from it, which has shaped you as a leader now?
Okay, so it's something I've learned about myself, and I don't think you ever quite solve it, because I think that we have some fundamental character strengths and weaknesses. I know what my weakness is, and I'll characterize it by explaining what happened when I first took the MoralDNA Profile, which is the psychometric I've developed to give us a moral mirror as to the values we believe in, the way we think and make ethical decisions. And I got the report and I showed it to my wife, who knows me well, and she started laughing. I said, "Why are you laughing?" She said, "Well, have you seen your humility score?" And I said, "No." "Is it good?" She said, "Well, it's 1 out of 9, Roger." She called me Poppet. And I said, "Am I arrogant?" She said, "No, but you're very confident in the way you work and what you believe in." But I thought about it a lot, and I think the weakness I have to guard against is that move from confidence into arrogance. And particularly, you and I work as individual gig economy experts. When you're on your own, you need to have that grounded confidence. And the same is true if you're working as a leader within an organization. And be very, very careful about that fine line between confidence and hubris. And that's the lesson I have to continually, challenge myself around.
Yeah, I recognise that the ego is the enemy, as they say.
The ego is the enemy.
Yeah, and finally, Roger, just in this part, what would be your top tip for listeners out there about inspiring leadership? What would you give them as a practical tip? Because you are a very practical man in your advice.
Yes. So my practical tip is this. There are 3 English words that derive from the Latin word for soil or ground, which is humus, not the Arabic word for chickpea puree with olive oil and tahini, but the Latin word humus, which give us 3 words, and they define what it means to be a human and a leader. And they are humanity, humility, which is my weakness, and humour, because psychological safety is critical for us to find the joy in our work, to have fun, and when we do that, the most amazing things happen.
Roger, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Jonathan.
And good luck with helping organisations to be more self-aware of this area.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.